That's what I just said. It looks heavier over here, and we're just staring into it.
He talked to me about declaring interest.
Okay. Okay, then we can vote,
I would assume he would.
It's only Monday, though.
okay. Just have them,
That's not it. Yeah.
Sure. It makes sense.
Interest to do that.
yeah, okay,
But let the board kind of have that discussion.
okay. Ready, Sally? Oh. Ready, okay. It's 5:15, we'll call this meeting to order, and we'd like to welcome everybody that's in the audience tonight. Would you please stand and recite the pledge with me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have no public communications to read. Is there any conflicts of, school board norms? Excuse me, Jennifer.
Decisions will be based on the board's strategic plan, its mission, and what's best for students. The board will act as stewards of tax dollars. Board members will complete foundation work to be prepared for meetings. Meetings will be efficient. All perspectives will be voiced and heard. All board members will maintain a professional decorum.
Thanks, Jennifer. No public communications, conflicts of interest. Any to Steve?
With the new board candidates, one of them, among other things, is my boss and my brother-in-law.
Okay.
I don't know if that's a problem or not, but we also have an even number if I vote.
Is there any input from the board? Heidi?
I make a motion to allow him to vote in this process with his even though he declared a conflict.
There's a motion. Greg? Second. Any discussion? Bob?
What's your wish? Do you want to vote, or would it be too uncomfortable?
I would rather not vote, but
Okay. Any other discussion? Greg?
Well, I mean, if he prefers not to vote, we just approved form to vote. So,
Just vote again.
yeah.
I did the motion to open this, so we have a
Yeah.
session.
Have our mics on too. Just a reminder to have your mics on so people can hear.
So hearing the discussion that he doesn't want to vote, then a person can vote nay then and so.
I can also withdraw my motion, but I just
Yeah.
wanted to make
I
a
would
motion
keep your motion in and then.
to open discussion.
So,
Did I say that?
we'll,
Roger,
what's that?
is it the declaration? I think it's a yes vote, because the declaration, the
He's declaring that a conflict
interest
exists.
exists, so
Yes,
he's declaring a conflict of interest, so he doesn't want to vote. So wouldn't it be a yes vote? For the declaration of conflict of interest?
So Heidi, do you want to change your motion to,
You wouldn't.
Point
I can withdraw my motion, but I want to make sure we're following.
Greg?
point of order, I don't think you can withdraw it once it's been
Okay.
put on the table.
So I would say let's keep it in, and then knowing under discussion that he doesn't want to vote, people can vote accordingly or whatever. So Sally, you want to do roll call then? Oh, Greg?
Yeah, just one point of clarification. He's declaring a conflict of interest.
Correct.
And so, just to clarify that, if we vote yes, then he's not going to vote. I just want to make sure we understand
What you're voting.
what we're voting at.
Just to make a comment too, in a typical situation, board members vote on every thing. You don't get a chance to abstain. However, in declaring conflicts of interest, Steve is suggesting that there's a conflict of interest that exists. So he does have a chance. If he's saying, I can't, I need to make this declaration, so the board then chooses if he can or cannot. Okay, he's declaring that he has a conflict.
So a yes vote on Heidi's motion would allow him to not vote? Correct,
You're agreeing that there's a conflict of interest.
correct, okay.
Just depends on what motion you're making, but that's the motion that was made. What was the motion that was made?
The motion was to allow him to go ahead and vote.
Okay, so
That's
now
what I
you're
thought.
voting the opposite of what?
Yep.
Okay, so
That's what I thought.
I think we need to clarify the vote again and what you're voting on. So can we,
So what you're voting on is to allow Steve to vote for the next position.
okay, so a yes would mean he can vote, and no would mean he has a conflict of interest.
And they wouldn't vote, so.
Okay?
Okay.
Just so everybody's clear.
Yep. Roll call?
Greg Allen.
No.
Heidi Larson.
No.
Jennifer Schmidt.
No.
Roger Hout.
No.
Brenda Remick.
No.
Robert Toso.
No.
Steve Belkamp.
I don't think he
He can vote, no,
Yeah.
okay. Diane Hanson, oh, Diane's not here, okay. Motion passes.
Okay.
Motion fails.
Oh, motion, sorry.
Yep, motion failed, so. Moving to consent agenda. Motion by Bob, seconded by Brenda. Any discussion? Hearing none, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving to number 4, our regular agenda, we have interviews with the board candidates. We'll first have Cedric come up here. And we have, yeah, if you can give just a brief introduction of yourself, then the board has just some questions for you then, so.
Okay. I'm Cedric Trevithick. I live obviously out of town, rurally, work at Butler Machinery. Been here about 8 years. Spent some time actually out in Dickinson, worked out there for a little while. Been back here for 3 years, I guess, since our stay in Dickinson. And I have 2 kids at Lincoln Elementary. Been involved with the PTO group at the school and different things going on at school a fair amount. Been involved with the referendum last year. Been to a few school board meetings, I guess, but anyway, it's kind of the short and long of it.
Okay. Number 1 question. Heidi?
Okay. What do you see as the major issue facing public education in North Dakota right now?
More locally, I guess, last year with the referendum, what seemed to really stand out was a lot of the opposition that we ran into was lack of education. The reasons for opposition weren't necessarily always legit issues, but a lot of times the reasons that they come up with, they didn't understand what really was going on or what was being asked for, or what they thought or were led to believe was not necessarily accurate to the district. So I question, I guess, looking at a broad term as far as the full state, the lack of involvement with our education. How many parents are actually involved enough in the education to really understand the need that exists within education today?
Okay. Number 2, Bob?
What do you see as the most significant opportunities and challenges facing the Jamestown School District right now?
Well, obviously our referendum failed last year. So we have a lot of unique opportunities. Both, a lot of our schools are facing maximum capacity. We're facing different work that needs to be done on different schools. And how do we efficiently overcome that? How do we move forwards, whether it be at the individual schools or go to grade level based schools? There's a lot of different options out there, but it's something that to educate the public, educate the people in town on, and get their buy-in, get them to understand why we need to move forwards and make decisions. It doesn't get cheaper and it doesn't get any better. It's not a problem that just resolves itself.
Okay, and number 3, Brenda?
What are the factors on which you will base your decision as a school board member?
I feel like having two kids in the school, it's something, I have a vested interest. Being a school board member is something I've wanted to be involved in the schools because of having children in the school district. And also being an employer here in town, we focus a lot on homegrown. How do we get our current youth to understand the opportunity within the careers locally? A lot of times people, they grow up, they graduate, and they move away. And when we hire people that aren't locally, not all the time, but a lot of times they have a shelf life. Eventually they go home, and it's understandable. They go home because they don't have family here. So there's a lot of different things to involve ourselves in to better what we have here today to keep our local people here and to show them the careers and opportunities and expose them and develop them into certain careers and opportunities they can be successful at.
Okay. Number 4, Greg?
Okay, please describe your perspective on the roles between the school board and the superintendent. What is the ideal relationship between the two?
In order to work as a team, they both have to support each other. And ultimately, the reason for educators and the superintendent, the ultimate goal is for the needs of the children, the needs of the pupils in the schools. So that has to be the focus on the best interest of the students, and then they have to work together.
Okay, number 5, Cedric, what do you believe is the best way to seek out and receive community feedback?
It's easy to get opposition. Sometimes opposition is good. It helps us to see things maybe in a different light, and it also gives us opportunity to educate. As seen in the past, a lot of times if opposition is lack of knowledge, that gives us the opportunity to do it. Now, how do we do that? How do we get to that point? I don't know that I have an exact answer there. I know there has been open forums before, and I find it really interesting how very little public will show up to an open forum, but they'll show up to vote no.
No.
So how do we bridge that gap? I don't know. After the referendum, would people be more willing to show up to an open forum where they could discuss that? Is there certain I know there were certain people that opposed maybe more than others. Would they be willing to, if there was direct contact with him, to get them to come? And certain people have more or less influence, maybe they would be willing to come and discuss. And
Okay. Number 6, Jennifer.
Our district's mission is learning for all. What does that mean to you?
first and foremost, it would be learning for all kids, students, pupils, but there's probably, I shouldn't say probably, there is learning at all ages through Bob sitting here or anybody else. I mean, as technology changes, we start looking at generations and how generations learn, how generations adapt. How I grew up, how my kids are growing up, there's learning to do every day because everything changes. And the ways we teach in the classroom today, when you start talking collaborative learning areas, there was no such thing back in the day of that. So there's definitely adapting and learning that takes place every day for everybody.
Thank you, and thank you for applying to be on the school board.
Okay, I think that's all of our questions. If you want to send Melissa in then,
Okay.
or when you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. They were told to stay around for the meeting. Okay. Hi, Melissa.
Hi.
Say, if you just want to tell us a little bit about yourself and stuff, and then once that's done, then we just got 5 questions that the board's going to ask. And so.
Okay. My name is Melissa Gleason, and my husband Robert and I moved here from California about 20 years ago, and we have raised 3 children here in Jamestown. Our oldest is 23. The middle one is a senior this year at the high school, and the baby, as he loves to be called, is 16 and is a sophomore at the high school. And I work at the University of Jamestown.
Okay. Question 1, Heidi.
What do you see as the major issue facing public education in North Dakota right now?
Keeping up with technology, especially being able to afford to keep up with technology. It's an extremely expensive item, and unfortunately, there's not a lot of funding. I know in the government in general, let alone in the school districts. So that is something that I see as being a major issue.
Okay. Number 2, Bob.
What do you see as the most significant opportunities and challenges facing the Jamestown School District right now?
Ooh, that's a good question, and just there are so many challenges. Funding again being one of the major challenges there, I think, and being able to keep up with other. Not just other states, but other countries as far as being able to keep up with the school. And I know trying to keep kids even engaged in classrooms and stuff right now is a very major issue. They have an attention span of about 30 seconds. Unless they are being entertained, so to speak. And they're very much live in a now, they're very, very now oriented, and trying to even keep them in school is difficult because they don't see the need for it, to be honest with you. There are high schoolers that I know that they're like, when I'm 18, I'm out. And that becomes a really big issue, especially if they are at the beginning of their senior year. But they just do not see the need for education because they think, oh, I can have a YouTube channel and become famous and make my money in other ways, and education is not important. So that is something that is definitely a major issue.
Okay. Number 3, Brenda.
What are the factors on which you will base your decisions as a school board member?
I learned a long time ago to listen to other people, take in their opinions and their thoughts and gather information, but make my own decision based on the facts that I know, not on hearsay, not on what other people have told me. But I do also think it's important to listen to what others have to say, but ultimately make my own, come to my own conclusions.
Number 4, Greg.
Describe your perspective of the roles between the school board and the superintendent, and what is the ideal relationship between the 2 positions?
Well, hopefully it's a very copacetic relationship where the board and the superintendent learn from each other and help each other to accomplish the goals for the school district. It is my understanding that the board kind of helps to set the policy, that the superintendent then is responsible for going into the school district and making sure that those are taken care of there and taking them to the teachers and the parents.
Okay. What do you believe is the best way to seek out or receive community feedback?
being involved in the community, going to baseball games, volleyball games, swim meets, teacher conferences, being involved in the schools. When I had kids that were younger, I was very involved in the PTOs, or PTAs, that's dating me, but yes, I was involved in PTA. And just talking to the kids themselves, talking to parents, talking to community members, just being open to having discussions with people. And on the flip side of that, if I hear people talking maybe misinformation or not very kindly about certain people, making sure that you kind of correct things as you hear them.
Okay. Number 6, Jennifer?
Thank you for applying to be on the school board. You and Cedric are making our decision very hard. Thank you for that. The final question. Our district's mission is learning for all. What does that mean to you?
Exactly that. It's learning for everyone, whether you are a special needs child, you're a typical student, or you're a gifted student. Every single student needs to be given the same opportunities to learn and to grow. I personally have 3 totally different students in my household, and they have all gone through the public school system here and have had many opportunities given to them, whether it be in special ed. I have a daughter who is on a 504 plan as well, and that has been kind of a different path that we have gone through on those things. And then I also have a son who's a typical student. Don't have any in the gifted program, but I know several who are in that as well. And I think it's very important that there's funding and opportunities no matter what your learning ability is. And also, teachers need to be given learning opportunities. I have heard over and over and over again that I know how to teach a typical student. I struggle with teaching those who struggle with math, or I struggle with those who are very, very gifted in math, and trying to keep them all, I don't want to use the word entertain, that is not the right word, but keep them involved in the classroom is very difficult when you have 30 students and all 30 of them are on totally different learning levels, totally different ways of learning. So that is something that is really important to me as well, is that teachers have that opportunity to get further education. And I would even like to see that they are required even to do some special ed learning as well, and in the gifted program, so that they have those resources available to them. And also the superintendent, the board, and the principals and staff in the schools need to be given opportunities to learn and grow themselves as well.
Okay. That's all of our questions for you. If you want to, later in the meeting we'll have more discussion, but if you want to have Cedric come back in, and then you guys can just, you'll get him, Sally?
Okay.
And just attend the meeting. That's
Okay.
all. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Okay, moving on to recognition. We have none. Reports. Student Council. Connor Fuchs, come forward.
I'm Connor Fuchs. I am the president of the Jamestown High School Student Council, and I would first like to start and apologize for my absence at the last meeting. I had a typical teenage move and totally forgot about it. So, and I definitely heard about it from Mr. Gaylor and Mr. Gardner. So, I won't let it happen again. But I'm here to report on the happenings of the Student Council, and most importantly, our homecoming from last weekend, or a couple weekends ago. our biggest problem in the student council has been funding and keeping up with our funds, and we've had good fundraisers in the last couple of years, but we're still below zero in our bank account. And one of our biggest fundraisers has always been school dances, and they have been definitely down in the past, but they're definitely improving. We had about 150 kids at our homecoming dance, which it's unheard of for the last couple of years, considering that it's not really a couples dance, it's just a show up and have fun. So we definitely profited on that. We didn't have a DJ, we had Mr. Gardner, so we didn't lose any money on the homecoming dance, or we didn't have any expenses with the homecoming dance. So that definitely helped out too. All around throughout our dance and our t-shirts for homecoming, we profited $785. Before homecoming, we were about $1,200 in the hole. So now we're around that $600 range, somewhere around there. And we had talked to Mr. Gaylor about making a plan of how we're going to get out of the hole, and we have a few fundraising opportunities that we're going to take up before we go to the NDASC convention in Bismarck in December. So hopefully we can end the year above zero for the first time in a few years. I was actually absent on the Friday of homecoming. I was out of town, but from what I hear from the rest of the student council, the pep rally was a huge success, and it was pretty crazy. The seniors definitely made a mess, but from what I hear, it was planned for what went on, so that's definitely good too. A negative was the weather. Our parade was canceled, and we also talked in our student council about possibly, if it is canceled by weather, in the future of having a makeup parade. So people like the band, because I'm in band and we prepare for the parade for weeks and weeks and weeks, and then not to have it happen it's not good for Mr. Bonley and for the other bands, Mr. Ani. So that's one of the things that we're going to talk about in our student council. Coming up in November, we have our blood drive, which is always good for our school, and then we have our convention in December.
Okay, any questions? Heidi?
Thank you for coming. We love to hear from the students and the student council, and I've heard great things about all the things you had planned for homecoming week, all the different days of dress up and whatever, and the pep rally as well. Mm-hmm. And I like the idea of the makeup parade, because the classes too, I know, also work on floats, right? And those were all ready to go, but just...
and money spent on the floats.
And money
too.
spent on the floats. So it's a great idea that you came up with.
Any other questions? Diane?
Yeah, thank you so much for coming, and you're an excellent speaker. I have just two things. I also would be very supportive of a makeup parade. That's a great idea. And I'm wondering if you have any clue on why your numbers came up for the dance this year.
From what I hear, a majority of the kids at the dance were freshmen. So hopefully when we have our dances in the future, that number doesn't go down. But now that we have a lot of freshmen that showed up for the dance, hopefully we can keep that class showing up. So when they're seniors, it's just the norm to go to the homecoming dance, and they can have 3/4 of the school there rather than 1/4. But I also think that the homecoming dance hasn't been as popular in the past, and some of the classes, the sophomore and the junior class, have just wanted to go to it and chosen to go to it, so that might help out with it too, that the classes that weren't very interested in it graduated out. So, and I don't mean that as a bad thing, but it just might not have been as popular for those classes. But if we can keep it popular with the freshman class and next year's freshman class, then hopefully we can keep our numbers rising. And we don't have many functions where we make money other than like the t-shirt sales for homecoming and any fundraisers that we do. So our dances are big.
Any other questions for Connor? Greg?
First of all, I think it's pretty awesome that you're taking the approach to dig yourself out of the hole. I think that's great. I think it's a great learning experience, and you're not here asking for a handout or anything like that, although we would pass the hat if we had to. But I just think that's great. I think it's a great lesson, and I just wish you all the best in that. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other comments or none? Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Moving to number 2, Superintendent's Report. Rob?
Thank you. The majority, actually all of what I have in my written report is already on our agenda for other topics, so I might just gloss a little bit over the superintendent evaluation and remind, while we will, I kind of want to walk through each of those components a little bit when we have our discussion in the agenda, but just that what I'm thinking or suggesting is that each month, just as a reminder, each month we would focus on two areas that would not prohibit anybody from doing 3 or 6, just stating that 2 every month would be the expectation. More than that is certainly always welcome too. But those areas, goal and vision setting, operations, resource management, board relations, curriculum and student support services, human resource management, and community relations. And that would just be an ongoing, every month, 2 different ones for, once a quarter. So everything would be looked at 3 times at a minimum, every one of those goal areas. And so that's what we're thinking in terms of that. The utility easement agreement, I would have liked to have gotten that to you sooner. I shared it when I did get it. It is consistent with what we had discussed at our last meeting. There shouldn't be any changes, and like I said, there was nothing that I had concern about, but I would have liked to have gotten it to you sooner. But there is a level of timeliness that needs to be addressed if we're going to grant that easement. Both Otter Tail and Two Rivers Activity Center would need to have that acted upon quickly. The STEM integration grant, again, is something that is on our agenda. As you know, you approve those major grants prior to submission. And I think this one is important to note just because there is a match. The match, however, is local industry. It's not the district. But the district does need to be aware that there are consumables, there are costs associated with these kinds of programs. So while it may not be the $15,000 match, there will be ongoing expenses if you do create a makerspace at the high school. There would be ongoing costs. They wouldn't be significant, but you have to be aware of those things, so I just want to make sure to touch on that. The last thing that I have that's not on the agenda is what's coming up next in board education. I had asked Mr. Hardy to reach out to his teaching staff and bring a teacher here and talk about, as you know, we're in the middle of implementation for the Marzano teacher evaluation system. So that means every year we're adding more components on in a 3-year cycle. And so Mr. Hardy has come forward and is willing to share that process of what that looks like. And Mrs. Hanson is here to talk from a teacher perspective about what that looks and feels like as a teacher, and just to provide that little bit of information so you understand what that process looks like at the school setting. So if you don't have any questions, that is my report.
Well, moving on, that was a good intro. Ryan, you want to come forward?
Good evening. On behalf of Mr. Hanson, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to come in and talk to you guys a little bit about where we're at with the implementation process of the Marzano evaluation system. I know Mr. Hagel and I talked a little bit last year about it, so give you a kind of brief rundown of where we were, and where we are now. Last year, we implemented design question 6, and I'm going to go through some design questions and what they are and what they relate to. So design question 6 is establishing rules and procedures. Design question 5, engaging students, and we've heard that a couple times from Cedric and Melissa tonight already. So that was one design question we wanted to get going right away when we were doing our observations. And then domain 4, which entails collegiality and professionalism. So we covered all those last year. We implemented them. This year now we're adding to it. Design question 1, which is communicating learning goals and feedback. Design question 2, helping students interact with new knowledge. Design question 8, establishing and maintaining effective relations with students. Domain 2, which is your planning and preparing. for teachers. So there are 60 elements total in the Marzano evaluation system. So far, starting this year, we're utilizing 39 of those 60. So we're well on our way of fully implementing the Marzano system that we set out a year ago. So we're making great headway. And a lot of that has to do with the trainings that not only us as administrators have gone through, the trainings we provide our staff, our teachers, because it's a lot to take in, and it can be overwhelming at times. But the districts had done a nice job of bringing in people to do presentations and trainings. Mr. Hagelin, I want to commend him too, as far as setting up videos for fidelity videos, where we sit down as an administrator group and we watch videos together and we rate. So because we want to be able to rate across the board, and whether you're in Lincoln, the middle school, or high school, you're going to be assured to the best possibility that you're going to get the same rating. Doesn't matter who's rating you, and it's gone very, very well. We got into it last year a little bit, and we started diving in, and formal observations. There's quite a bit that goes on when you have a formal observation now. That's different than evaluation. Observations when you're going into the classroom and you're using the iObservation tool that we have, the online tool, which is phenomenal, by the way. Instant feedback right away. When I leave the classroom, I hit send. It's sitting in the teacher's email as I walk out the door. It's a great, effective tool that we can have that open communication line going. But formal observations consist of a pre-conference you sit down with the teacher, usually half hour or so, 45 minutes, and then you go in for a classroom, for instance at the middle school, 45-minute session where you do your observation, and then you do a post-conference after that with the teacher. So you're talking 3 separate meetings for one formal observation. So the task force talked with not only teachers and administrators. We made a decision that we weren't going to do formal observations on every single teacher every single year. You're still going to have evaluation, but just not a formal observation. So we set up a plan, a 3-year plan. Formal observation is 1 year. Another year, that same year, a different teacher may have what is a self-assessment. The self-assessment guide is basically break down what we as administrators look at, and then the teacher can sit and reflect. Well, how do we think I'm doing on it? What can I improve on? What is my strengths? What are my areas of growth? Because once again, the reason we selected Marzano is because of the growth mindset that goes with it. So the self-assessment is a key year too, where then we sit down as teacher administrator and go over how they feel they're doing and how we see they're doing. So that's another aspect. And then the last thing, which I think is going to be very important, teachers may do peer observations. So that is Mrs. Hanson may go into Mr. Thorson's class, both 6th grade science. She may go into a 7th grade English class. It doesn't matter what class they go into, but she's going to observe that teacher and give that teacher feedback. And then she's also going to have someone come into her room, another teacher, and give her feedback. So they're not getting feedback from strictly administrators throughout our process that we're implementing. They're giving each other feedback, and the nice thing about that is it stays between the 2 teachers. I can't see it. Mr. Leck can't see it. It's strictly between the 2 teachers that are doing the peer observation, so they can give true, genuine feedback to each other without any concern that an administrator may see it or anything like that. So those are our 3 years. There's formal observations, though. There's two different types of tiers for teachers. You have Tier 1 teachers, with anybody new to the district, 3 years or less of experience. They're always going to have a formal observation those first 3 years, plus their 2 evaluations. Tier 2 teachers, which is more than 3 years, that's when you get in your rotation. So like Mr. Sill and I sat down and we divvied up our teachers into thirds, basically, and some are getting formals, some are getting self-assessments, and some are doing peer-to-peer observations. And then we'll just have a rotating basis. That's just the nuts and bolts. And I know I'm going kind of quick, but how's it going? I love it. Going into the classroom is the best time of the day. Just seeing all the learning that's going on. Seeing the kids engage. I know, like I said, Cedric and Melissa talk about engagement. There's a lot of good things happening, and I can only speak for middle school. I haven't had the opportunity to get into any other schools, but that may be around the corner. But there's a lot of learning going on. One thing I want to attribute, it's another initiative that the district started last year. It's called Improving Academic Literacy. It's IAL, if we use it, IAL, Improving Academic Literacy. I'm currently in it right now, the training program. We've sent a few people last year. The visible learning and engagement when you go into classrooms is unbelievable. It's great to see. The motto is everybody does everything. So every kid is participating, expected to participate in the class discussion or whatever the unit is, and you can see it happening. You can't have that child, and think back to when you were in school, the kid that just didn't say anything, was in the chill zone, just hanging out, didn't get in trouble, but may not have been learning a lot either because they didn't say anything. They just were there for 45 minutes, bell rang, and away they went. It doesn't happen anymore. Student collaboration is phenomenal, and that you learn to talk about that, and that's collaboration, learning from each other. Students sometimes learn better from each other than they do an educator standing in front. This is all part of that IAL program that I'm going through, that we've implemented, and it's phenomenal when you go into a classroom and you can see a question instead of raising hands. Quickly, if you think the answer is A, stand up. If you think the answer is B, wave your arms around in circles. It's just that type of because you can visibly see everybody's doing it versus calling on the same kid every single time or the same other. It's just some great strategies to engage students in learning. I will talk fast, but I want give some time to Mrs. Hanson to give a teacher perspective, and then after that, we'll open up to any questions that you have.
Good evening. I'm going to speak to more the program that I've been involved in for the last 2 years. North Dakota Education Standards and Practice Board has a teacher support system, and I've been acting as a mentor for the last 2 years, and I know that Jamestown Public Schools has a new teacher program that where they have a mentor for any teacher that comes in with an experience. But this mentor-mentee program I participate in is basically for first-year teachers only. And I've, like I said, participated in the last 2 years, and Marzano is the foundation for this whole program. These new teachers come in, I'm really pleased. They're from 2 different North Dakota universities that I had the opportunity of working with, and they are quite prepped on Marzano, so they're familiar with some of the language. Now, they did take a look at Danielson and Marshall as well, because these are 2 other programs, but most of North Dakota school districts are using Marzano. So they're key with it, and our design basically is we're focusing on, especially these early parts of school, is that, student engagement is a key piece. With student engagement, you're going to get classroom management, and along will come effective relationships, and then we're working on lesson design. And Marzano, each week that we meet, it's the foundation. We have to establish a design, and it all comes from my mentee as to what she's looking at. I know Mr. Hardy had mentioned that it's great to see these guys in the classroom. Initially last year, we did have students, why are they in here? What are they doing? So it's new, it's coming about. This year I haven't heard any comments yet as to why they were in there. It's a rigorous program. I know he had mentioned that you as administrators take training on videos to rate. We as teachers also have those tools to where we can see other teachers that may be online demonstrating certain pieces of the Marzano plan. Are there any questions?
Heidi?
I know we do, would you say 40? How many points do we?
60.
We're 39 of the 60.
39, almost 40 of the 60 points. Congratulations. That is a huge undertaking. So can you just give me an example of like the peer-to-peer, like one point that the peer-to-peer, like the other teachers may evaluate another teacher on? Just one example.
Okay. One of my requirements is with my mentee, I need to get in and I have to evaluate her throughout the year. I will be using the peer observation that is with the program of Marzano. She, in her own classroom, will realize what works for her. And we're gonna focus on those strengths. But then she also needs to be that person to step back as what are areas of growth that she needs to focus on. And those are the pieces that we'll probably work on the most. I mean, when you have the design questions that are broken apart, you have the domains that go with each, and they cite some examples. And basically that's what these guys are looking for. When they come into the classroom, we see them for anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes max. One of the cons of that is that 5 minutes before they walk in, something tremendous happened and they didn't see it. Situation also may happen, technology fails that day, and here they come walking in the door, and you got to go to Plan B, okay? So, and there are things that they might not have known those pieces. You're being evaluated on what they see. So that's where it kind of gets a little, sometimes.
You said the students were kind of questioning when the administrators come in. How do they react now when they come in, or?
They acknowledge you. They say hello. They'll
Okay.
wave, but then that's my job.
So they're more
Yeah.
accepting and
Mhm.
so. Okay. Any other, Diane?
I have two questions. The first is, you mentioned your mentor for first-time teachers. Would that be first time ever to teach or first time in the district as well?
My program is designed for the first-year teacher, first experience. We do, like I said, the district does have and some of these tie over. I know I have a checklist for that too, because we had to make sure that we weren't doubling up on these new teachers coming in. But it's similar, and I'm going to venture to say that Marzano was probably discussed with these new teachers, depending on where their experience came from, because they may be have been under a different program.
And my second question is probably for Mr. Hardy. Just to clarify in my mind, if I'm a teacher here in the district, I'll be on a 3-year plan. 1 year, I will have peer evaluation. 1 year, the next year or some year of those 3 years, I will do a self-assessment, and then a 3rd year, I'll do an observation, but not all 3 in 1 year. Is that right?
First, or new to the district, 3 years or less, you're going to have a formal observation once every year. You won't start the peer observation or the self-assessment until after your 3rd year in the district. And then it goes on a rotation basis. Yearly, yes.
Bob?
I've always been a real strong believer in self-evaluation, because that's where things start to change if you believe in it. But sometimes teachers haven't been as receptive to that concept as maybe I would have liked. How's that been? How are the teachers approaching the self-evaluation, I guess, is what I want to know.
I guess we'll find out soon. We just rolled it out. But no, I will let you know. But in the past, though, we've done goals and set goals with teachers and give us 3 strengths and 3 opportunities, and we've gone over them, and all those conversations have gone well. So I think it's similar fashion. I think it's going to be nice, though, the biggest thing I think the takeaway would be the teachers and administrators looking at the exact same thing, because the paper they're filling out is the same thing I have on my computer when I'm in the classroom. So we can really look down, okay, and then we can have discussions. Well, what evidence can you have that rates you here? And then I can see that too. So I think it's going to be a way to collaborate together and learn, because the ultimate goal is growth, right? It's not a I got you thing. It's we want to learn to grow together to provide the best possible education for our students.
Oh, Steve?
Do subs get involved with this also, or, I mean, just so there's not a big drop-off when they're in the classroom?
With substitute teachers, we'll leave out a clear lesson design. I have personally wrote notes on what does this look like, and since we've been doing it for a couple years, it depends on what period of the year. The kids will be able to tell her, to where when we collaborate in our groups, we have to come up with an essential question. They'll lead, they'll take over, if she's comfortable doing that. Some of them may not be at that point, and then it might be same old lesson plans from before.
Rob?
Just to comment on a few things. The question related to the self-assessment, I think, was a good one. I want to kind of outline, and I can in the future bring that to see what that looks like. But it's more than just, I'm going to circle the dot of where I'm at, or where I think I'm at. I mean, there's a process where that's certainly part of it. You have to say, I believe I'm in this, I have to reflect, and this is where I think I'm at in this domain, in this element. But it goes beyond that by saying, okay, this is what I've targeted now. This is where I see myself. What am I targeting, for improvement? How am I going to get there? I'm going to write a goal to where I want to go to, and then I'm going to ask the question of how can my principal and I work together to accomplish what these goals are. It's really about that growth mindset, as Ryan had talked about. It's more than just rating myself. Evaluation of any kind, and if you think of professional growth like a ruler, evaluation's only this part of it. There's a lot of growth that happens beyond just an evaluation, and we want to focus on that. I think for too long, when we talk about an evaluation system, it focuses just on March 15th and December 15th, which are the evaluation landmark dates. They have to get done by these points. And we want it to be more than that. We want it to be a growth experience between an administrator and a teacher, because that's what it's really about. That's where growth takes place. It doesn't take place just because an evaluation said this. It's the meat happens in between those periods of time, and that's what we want to focus on. And I do think that self-evaluation is a great piece for people to sit back and reflect, write some goals, work with their administrator, but it really is, as Ryan said, it's about a growth mindset. And the other thing that I wanted to just touch on is, and I know I've mentioned this before, but our expectation from central office to principals is 5 hours a week. If you think about the job of a building principal, that's a lot of time. 5 hours every week devoted to simply to classroom observations and providing feedback. That's a big shift from what we used to have, and that's reprioritizing where our time should be. But I just want the board to understand that's a big shift of responsibility too. And our principals have done a great job in managing that, and it's difficult. There's a lot of responsibilities that we put on our principals' plates. And yes, the first one is instructional leadership. That's number one, and that's why we prioritize the amount of time. But they have a lot of jobs that they're expected to do in those hours that they're here. And so being able to manage those, it's a significant, I've seen Mr. Hardy and Mr. Stillwell's spreadsheet. It's full of,
It's pretty. It's colorful.
it's full of stuff of different times. I'm in here, and it takes coordination, but I just want the board to understand it's a significant undertaking to provide the level of feedback in which they're doing. They're doing a great job, and we're proud of them.
Can I add to that, Mr. Lick? We talked about formal observations, self-assessment, and peer observation. Those are just three of the observations. What Mrs. Hanson's talking about, the 15, 20-minute snapshots, are informals. And we're doing those. Those are the things we're doing on a weekly basis, getting in those 5 hours. So, I mean, on a week average, Mr. Still and I are in the classroom 12 to 13 times a piece. So we're talking 26 of our teachers have an administrator in their classroom during a week. So we're in there a lot. And so, yes, we may miss a great lesson at one time, but if we're in there enough, we're going to see it. And those routines that are established, like she said, when a sub comes in, we know if routines have been established because they don't miss a beat, there's not a loss of instruction time, and kids are just rolling and learning is happening. And that's why we like to be in there as often as possible to get a true picture of what's happening in the classroom, which is a change, like Mr. Lex said, from the past, where it's, I'm coming in on this date, okay, put on your dog and pony show, here I come. So it's been a great tool and so far great process.
Rob?
Just one more comment too regarding the peer-to-peer evaluation, just so we're all on the same page of what that means. Ryan had talked about that, the peer-to-peer observation it's not administrator driven. We don't have any access with the other observations. Those all drive into that evaluation. And like I said, evaluation is only one chunk of professional growth. It's a piece of it. And so the peer-to-peer is one that fits in the non-evaluative portion, but it's just as important, if not more important, to the growth of a teacher. To get that feedback, that doesn't flow into an evaluation. That's simply growth and discussion pedagogically between one teacher and another teacher. That doesn't flow into an evaluation. That is between two teachers. And it's, research has shown pretty well that kind of professional growth impacts teachers' ability to grow. So it's something that we felt pretty passionate about integrating. It's a balance. You could spend 20 hours a week in a classroom. You have to be able to balance the difference between what you can do and still provide good feedback for people. So I think that, like I said, I think teachers have done a great job at embracing this new paradigm, and I think the administrators have done a really good job in implementing it in a way that our teachers are getting good feedback, which is really what we're about.
Any other, Jennifer?
I just wanted to say to both of you, thank you for coming in, because as a new board member, I don't know all the nuances, but I do understand that one of the ways that we mostly know how well our students are doing is by standardized testing. But by you guys doing this rigorous form of evaluation of each other and peers, it gives us another insight of what's really happening in our classrooms and what really great things are happening. So I imagine there's probably some growing pains and maybe some that don't love it. But I hope that they will come around to the fact that this is just another great tool for us to know what's actually happening in our classrooms and not just using standardized tests. So thank you.
I'd like to, you're welcome, first of all. But, and it sounds, yeah, it's great to be in the classroom, but the thing that really drives what's the kids learning and where they're at is giving feedback and providing that feedback and growing. Because it's what we do in the classroom that drives student growth. It's not what we teach, it's how we teach. And if we can help teachers become better teachers and meet the needs of learning for all, then we're only going to be successful in the future for many, many years to come.
Okay, any other questions for him? Not, thanks for coming. Thanks for the input.
Thanks, guys.
Moving on to correspondence, we have none. Any old business? Hearing none, moving into new business. We have nothing under activities. Building and grounds. There a motion for the utility easement request? Motion by Jennifer, seconded by Bob. Any discussion on it? Heidi?
I noticed on that page 2 that it was zero, like we weren't receiving anything financially. Is that customary that you don't get paid for easements, or is that just because it's two public entities?
Rob, you want to?
I believe that's typical to what we've done.
Any other discussion? Bob?
I'm curious, I should have a better grasp of the, between the soccer field and where the easement is, do you know about how much space is that? Is it pretty loose, or, I mean, is it, it's not going to cramp us anyway?
No, I'm not concerned about the space. I couldn't give you how far it is exactly, but it's not going to cramp anything we want to do in that area. It's 5 feet from that property line. You know, it isn't going to provide any undue burden.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We have nothing under curriculum. Moving to number 4, finance. Is there a motion to approve the STEM grant? Or to move to submit it? Motion by Brenda, seconded by Heidi. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving to personnel compensation study. Sally?
Mr. Leck and I have had conversation over the last couple of years on, evaluating our support staff, wages. And we've discussed, doing a compensation study, a wage compensation study, but those can be expensive. I currently have, West Fargo's. So what I'm doing is taking a look at and getting other school districts, maybe closer to our size, Valley City, and getting all that information and evaluating so that we could have a discussion, with the ad hoc or, develop ad hoc of, the feasibility or the feasibility and affordability of creating a salary schedule for the support staff. Similar to teachers only, it's an hourly. We, have the classifications, do a study and make sure that we have everything classified correctly. And so those support staff can see, just like a teacher, okay, if I have 5 years' experience, this is where I'm headed. And, just like when we negotiate with the teachers, it'll be 3% on the base, and it would, trickle down through there. But to do a really good study and, like I said, see if it's feasible and affordable and the best method to use. So, and we'll bring it back to you. I'll bring it back to you.
Okay, Jennifer?
Just a quick question. Other than wanting to make sure that we're competitive, is there like a retention issue that we have in the support staff? What is the basis behind needing this?
Currently, right now we have a beginning wage and a top wage, So over the last couple years, we've built, and the board authorized, if someone has 5 years, I'll just use an example. They were a paraeducator at a previous district. They may have been there 15 years, have a lot of experience. The board has authorized us to hire them and give them a minimum of 3-year experience. Okay, so we look at who in the district was here 3 years, kind of when we started this. Well, obviously now, as time goes by, what's 3 years? They're increasing. What's the 3-year experience? And competitiveness. We are struggling to get, custodians in the district. So I think, just to evaluate, make sure we're paying people appropriately and have a growth that they know that, okay, if I'm, going to be here, I can see where I'm going. Whereas right now, they only can know that every year, and not that the board has to give them a raise, that whatever the board gives, but it would give them, they could see where, that they could possibly make more money down the road.
Diane?
What a great morale booster. I think it's really a good idea. And ironically, I've had a couple of support staff approach me just in the last week talking about concerns with morale and not feeling like they're getting a fair shake with salary. So, it was just coincidental, but I think it's a really good thing that we're doing this. I hope it goes forward.
Rob?
Just a comment to answer Jennifer's question from my perspective too. I think we have both a recruitment and a retainment concerns. And one of the things a compensation study will help us to understand is, are we talking an employment issue? Is there a workforce issue? Or is it a salary issue? Are we compensating people appropriately compared to other positions or other districts or other similar positions within the community or surrounding community? Or is it simply an employment issue? We don't have enough people interested in those types of jobs. They're very different problems. And then the recruitment, we want to make sure when we have first-rate people, we can keep them. Because we want to have, our kids deserve the best teachers, our kids deserve the best support staff, our kids deserve the best of everything that we can provide. And so we want to ensure that if that recruitment and retention of employees are both addressed. But I don't think we can do that unless we look at some type of compensation study, whether that's formal or informal, to determine what it is exactly that we're looking at. Are we looking at an employment issue, or are we looking at a compensation issue?
I like the idea a little bit more of an informal one, as you kind of suggested, making some phone calls, just because once you go into that formal setting, that may tie the board to something that we are not feasible to, to carry out. So that would just be my concern about the compensation study.
Yeah, and we talked about that. The cost of the compensation study is, is a lot of money, and you go through all that work and, okay. So, but yeah, I've been in the process of gathering from other schools, similar size, Valley City and things like that. But the retention is because, a hidden cost in turnover is HR. The number of hours that everybody spends in the hiring process, the paperwork portion is unreal. And plus, for the students' sake, you want consistency in the classroom, so.
Steve?
Does that address just wages or benefits also?
It would just address the wages. Our benefits, we have, the health insurance, which we have a good health insurance, and our consultants will evaluate and take a look at our benefits and the EAP. That can be part of it if you learn something from another district that, might be beneficial and stuff, but there's always a cost there too. I think our benefit package is good, except when some employees, when they're working, they want to look at, and Greg can testify to this, they want to look at the take-home pay, take the life insurance, health insurance, I just need money now. But, the overall, but mainly the wage.
Okay. Any other? Greg?
Just one question, and you kind of alluded to it when you talked about hiring the best support staff. Do we have any type of evaluation system in place for the support staff?
Yep, they're all evaluated annually.
Any other questions for Sally? Heidi?
I just want to add, I think it's a good idea. I think we also may want to consider similar positions within the community as well as just other school districts for custodial or similar skill sets. And also, too, it'd be interesting, too, just to see if when people look at the district, do they consider our benefits? Because our health insurance is, it's something for us to be proud of. I think we have a good health insurance plan currently, and as the landscape for healthcare is changing and the cost of health insurance, I think our plan looks pretty good. So,
Any other discussion? None? Okay. Moving on to letter B, superintendent's evaluation.
Okay, what I would like to do is just kind of walk through each of these, talk a little bit about the format again, but right now, this is what I've taken from the School Boards Association evaluation document. As I talked about last time, we compressed them. Doing 50-plus elements, it seemed a little onerous, okay? And so we wanted to make it a little more user-friendly. But I kept some of the formatting, changed some things around, but right now this is my document. And I don't want it to be my document, I want it to be your document. You're the one that does this. And so I want you to feel comfortable with all of these components and that it reaches all the goals, the expectations that you have for the position. Ultimately, the evaluation, just like we've talked about with teachers, these are growth processes. We're after assessing where you're at and then how can I help you get better. We aren't in that fixed mindset of this is what I am. I want this to be of where can I go next. Okay, and so again, 6 components. The first, goal and vision setting. I'm not going to read the expectations and suggested evidence for each of them, but as you go through, there are expectations that kind of list out what we've kind of targeted or what's there for an expectation, suggested evidence where you might see those things. Both of those can be changed and edited as you feel is necessary. It's a starting point as far as I'm concerned. And then when they'll be assessed, I put that in each of the components. Okay, so as you go through every month, you could look and say, okay, I'm not here. It's the next component. But again, give them feedback in every one. But I am going to read the questions because I think they're important. The superintendent assists the board with developing progress monitoring or updating a district-wide strategic plan that's based on district data, the district's mission, and/or other identified needs. The plan outlines both short-term and long-term goals. Question 2, the superintendent demonstrates progress towards accomplishing district goals. So in this component, there are those 2 questions. As we've talked about before, if the rating, it's on a Likert scale from 1 to 4, 1 being the lowest, 4 being the highest. If there is a 1 to 2, what the board has had established in the past is provide some specificity to what that means. I'm not seeing what I'm expecting or needing to see. For what reason? Give some feedback on what that is. If it's I'm not seeing enough goal progress, please write that down so there's a little bit of understanding on what that means. So when it's rated, there's feedback to it. And then the second thing that's in all of these components is what information or resources would you like to see in relation to the superintendent's performance in this component. So what I mean by that is there's times I've served as a lay person on a board too. Sometimes we don't see everything. We don't know everything that takes place. And sometimes it's as easy as saying, I don't get what you mean. Please help me understand this piece. You say you're doing this, or I don't see that. You reference this other document. I need to see it. Help me understand what you're doing. So if there's more information that you need, that would be the place to say, I'm just not feeling like I have enough information to give a good rating in this area. So just that's another place where you could go, and that's in all the components. In board relations, superintendents focus on policy implementation, district operation, and ensuring board's primary focus on goal setting and policy adoption. That's one section. So in that section, there's 2 questions. The board agenda provides regular progress monitoring of the district's goals and strategic plan. Second question in that section, the superintendent executes all roles and responsibilities in the job description and in policy, and reports to the board on policy implementation and amendments as needed. So in section B of board relations, superintendent as organized, informed, and responsive resource. There's 5 questions. Superintendent provides the board with all necessary information within a reasonable time frame prior to a board meeting and responds to board questions in a timely manner. Question 6, the information the superintendent provides to the board, staff, and public is accurate and communicated effectively. Question 7, the superintendent complies with state and federal law and district policy. Superintendent upholds the ESPB Code of Professional Conduct. And I provided a link to that also. Question 8, superintendent's decisions do not need review or reconsideration by the board. Question 9, superintendent takes final responsibility for the execution of any duties that he or she has delegated. Are there questions in this section, and I didn't ask in the previous section, that you feel, does this, let's go back to goal and vision setting. Do you feel like this accurately represents what you need to see? Does there need to be more editing of questions? Do you feel confident with that? Is it? Okay. And I know you've seen these for another, since the past meeting. Go ahead.
My question is really to process, and maybe we covered this and I might have missed it, but so as a board, we have to, is this the one where we by December we have to approve satisfactory or unsatisfactory? So I like a 4-point Likert scale, but so is it already been determined, or would we determine like what numbers would be unsatisfactory and which ones would be satisfactory, just so we can submit have the vote that we need to have to comply with Century Code?
It is what Century Code outlines is satisfactory and unsatisfactory. You don't get levels other than that. It simply says satisfactory, unsatisfactory. There aren't numbers associated with unsatisfactory, like a cut score. We certainly could do that. I know they do that in the NDSBA version, but that isn't something you would see here. It would be a compiled, aggregated number that would then come to Mr. Hout, and we would look at those numbers. Really, though, if you're looking at it, 1 would be a satisfactory, 2 is borderline satisfactory, 3 satisfactory, 4 exceeding expectations would kind of be the scale that I would think you would use in that kind of a system. Really, 1 being the unsatisfactory.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're meeting our Century Code requirements. I guess that was just my concern about the 1 through 4, just because it wasn't outlined that I saw in the document thing. And then my second question is, would we do this through this Google Docs, and then the results would just be compiled by President Hout? Okay.
Yep, you would do this every month. It would be aggregate. It would just collect in a Google form. It'd be similar to how we do the meeting evaluation, the meeting assessment at the end of the meeting. We just collect that. It would be compiled, and then we'd look at that data. November 15th and March 15th continue to be the dates that those have to be completed by. Yep, it was changed, November. Okay, so board relations, do you feel like those meet your expectations, your needs? Anything? And this is a living document, because you start with something doesn't mean you can't change it. I would ask that you keep the same evaluation over the course of a year. If you want to make changes, we do it in July. But I think that's common sense too. In the next section is human resource management. Again, there's 2 sections. The first section, there's 3 sections. Section 3A, superintendent staff management practices. The superintendent ensures the development of job descriptions, orientation for new staff, dissemination of policies, handbooks as appropriate for new and existing staff. Question 11, the superintendent provides leadership and sound recommendations to the board on personnel and contractual matters. In section B, superintendent's role in staff development and evaluation. Question 12, the superintendent provides for timely and high-quality professional development for staff. Question 13, the superintendent cultivates a growth mindset within a district that supports creativity and innovative practice. Section C, superintendent as respected leader for district staff and administrators. Superintendent recommends to the board policies and amendments to the negotiated agreement which are designed to promote a fair and equitable and safe and productive workplace. Question 15, the superintendent seeks input from staff as appropriate on district goals, issues, and changes to programs, policies, procedures. Question 16, superintendent encourages, empowers, and supports principals in leading his or her school building. Questions, concerns about this, any of the sections in human resource management? Okay.
No.
Curriculum and student support services, section A, superintendent oversight on curriculum. Superintendent presents the board with data on indicators of student achievement in post-secondary preparation. Question 18, superintendent recommends curriculum changes as necessary that support the district's mission, strategic plan, and goals. Section 4B, superintendent support of students' academic success. Question 19, superintendent provides a safe educational environment. Question 20, superintendent ensures that intervention systems provide support for academic, social, and emotional needs. Question 21, superintendent ensures that student support services are provided for all special categories of students, including disabled, English language learners, and homeless students. Any questions on or areas of concern in curriculum and student support services?
Bob?
I'm curious, as we go through some of these, it seems like something you're going to have to do to educate the board is provide us with more reports. The Marzano report fits in real well to what we're doing here. But some of the other areas, I just was thinking on it on this area. The board education is going to be an important part of this process.
They tie together, don't they? That's one of the things that we've been trying to move towards is, and I think as the board gets used to this kind of process, you'll see we do provide an awful lot of information that does fit into these realms, but it might be something that starts to trigger as we share stuff. And that might, and I think it's also why the last question, what information or resources would you like to see in relation, that helps. Because as we go through these, you might not feel, boy, I don't know, or that's coming, you know, I know the superintendent's report, for example, not the one I give every month, but the one we give annually. That's got a lot of data in there. And if you're going to, you know, like I said, the superintendent's report that I don't do, that Sally and her staff really do, but it provides a lot of information to the board, and so you might be waiting for that document, and you know, maybe there's some timing things that we need to look at, but I think there, you know, we're kind of throwing out something. People aren't doing this like we're doing it. I think it's a good process to try, and I think we'll go through some bumps in implementation, but I think it's a good process.
Steve, then Heidi.
Maybe, Bob, to answer your question, these last 2 pages, if we don't hear anything, maybe that no news is good news.
Heidi?
I was just going to say, this, as we move through this process too, I think since we'll be probably redoing our strategic plan and starting in another year, that this may well feed into some of those things as well. And then you also might want to warn your presenters that since we're now evaluating, that we're going to have a lot more questions for them.
Jennifer?
Yeah, as we were going through some of these questions, up to this point, there have been some where I would not be able to legitimately rate anything as only being on the board since July. And so I haven't had the breadth of experience as other board members, so I'm not able to answer these. So the timing piece is going to be really important for that board education to tie in with what we're evaluating during those months. So there will, to get a true representation of the evaluation, we'll have to have some really good coordination there.
And one thing we can start to do too is as we have board education, we can start tying it. You know, this ties to section 4, this side, you know, where does it tie to as a component? Just so when maybe if you are collecting data on those things, you can have some ideas of what that means? No questions on that section. Other questions? Section 5 is community relations. Section 5A, superintendent involvement in community. Question 22, the superintendent is involved in activities of community and civic organizations. Question 23, superintendent is available to members of the community and seeks out avenues to engage the community in discussions regarding the school district. 5B, superintendent engages community. Superintendent oversees the implementation of a communications plan, regularly engages with news media about school district activities, and ensures pertinent information is shared through district newsletter, website, social media as appropriate. Question 25, the superintendent works with key community stakeholders to help develop the district's mission and support district schools. Questions on community relations, concerns, areas we missed? Okay. Last section, operations resource management. 6A, superintendent financial management. Question 26, superintendent's budget recommendations meet various requirements of state law such as deadlines, limitations of special reserve fund and ending fund balance. Question 27, superintendent clearly articulates budget recommendations to the board with applicable supporting documentation. Question 28, superintendent seeks out alternative revenue sources as appropriate and available to support district initiatives. Section 6B, our last section, superintendent provides for needs. Question 29, superintendent provides a process for the procurement of necessary equipment and supplies and ensures that expenditures are within budget appropriations. Question 30, the superintendent ensures that school buildings, grounds, and equipment are well maintained, facility audits are conducted, preventative maintenance is up to date, and brings recommendations to the board to maintain and update facilities. So questions, additions, omissions, concerns, operations and resources management, process in general. So that's what I have. At some point, I would like for the board to look to adopt, amend, however, to make it yours, that you feel appropriate to do that. I think at this point, at least for the next evaluation, it might be difficult to use this unless you're going to do all of the elements. And it is coming at November 15th. So you may want to consider how that might work to do an evaluation. And I would suggest that you stay consistent from from the beginning evaluation to the next, because the way the process is set up, it should be formative. So what you're seeing in November 15th, you're giving me feedback on to improve between now and the second evaluation, which is in March. So you should have the same measure, the same tool. And it really doesn't matter to me if it's this now, or this later, or this amended. I think it just comes down to what do you feel comfortable with and what do you want to do.
Any thoughts from the board? Diane?
I feel completely comfortable with it. It's very thorough and it's very organized and efficient, and I would suggest that we go ahead with our traditional evaluation in November, December, November 15th, and then we put out a motion soon after to adopt this.
Heidi? Yeah. Rob, you were saying earlier that if whatever we use in November here, we should be using the same one in March then?
I think that you should, and that doesn't mean that you couldn't use this. The tool you already use is 50 questions long. So you certainly could use this as the tool. You would just have to you wouldn't be doing the month by month right now. You would be collecting on one period of time. You would be saying, I'm going to do all of these. And then starting in, whenever it's adopted, after that you would start going on the monthly cycles. So you'd have one, everyone would be evaluated, and every component would be evaluated now, and then you'd be on a month by month cycle after that.
Bob?
I think it'd be interesting to start it now and in November do this, and because it is going to be a work in progress. We got to jump in at some point, and there's a lot of work that's been done. We've had the Mars. I like to see I like the way it ties in to what we're talking about district wide. So I think that would be a good form of feedback for you. So I think we just jump in.
Heidi? Oh, Jennifer, sorry.
I think I agree that we can go ahead and jump in if we were to do the whole thing for those of us that are newer to the board, and then we will be getting a new board member this evening, since it is a living document, would it be appropriate to maybe put an not applicable selection? And just for maybe this one time around or something until we get used to it, for those of us that have only been on the board for a couple months?
I thought of that too, and I think we could either do a not applicable or just leave it blank. You know, if somebody would just leave it blank, we would know that doesn't mean a 0. I mean, you don't score 0, it's 1 to 4, and we would just have to, you know, when we collect that data, it would just omit those blank spots. We could certainly do that too, but I think that's where it comes down to that last question: what do I need to feel comfortable? What information do I need to be comfortable? That could drive our board education. If we come back and we have board members saying, I'm not seeing this, so I can't give you a rating because I don't see this, well, I know I need to give more information in that area.
Heidi?
So, yeah, I agree with Diane and Bob. I think I'm comfortable with the tool. And the only question as I read through it, kind of looked at each question, the only question I thought, could it just maybe be clarified a little bit better? There was one question in there, and I can't remember which subject it was under, but where it said the board would have to revisit decisions made by the superintendent. I think that maybe we could add to that without giving new information, because sometimes we make decisions are made, but then we get new information, and it's perfectly legitimate that might happen. I just thought that question just could be taken the wrong way or seemed confusing. So I think that was the only question that I had that I thought maybe needed a little bit more explaining. So
I'll clarify that question, and you know, the intention is that, you know, the intention of the question is that the board doesn't have to revisit any decision that's made administratively. It doesn't follow that chain of grievance, or that decisions made follow policy. You don't have to come and address them because policy wasn't followed, things like that.
Any other? Brenda?
I just want to point out that as new board members come on, we've all experienced what you're going through, Jen.
I too think, agree with everybody. I think it's, the sooner we jump into it, the better off we'll be, so. So are you going to bring it back, Rob, for approval, or are we just going to?
Well, if you're comfortable, you could certainly approve it with some language change to question 8 that I would work on I think we're on the same page as far as that explanation, and I would just have to reword it to something of that nature, but if everybody's comfortable with that.
Okay.
A reminder that our first meeting in November, we would have to have this meeting.
Right. Yeah.
We will have one more meeting if we don't decide everything.
Heidi?
I'd make a motion to approve this evaluation with just the clarification on question 8 to be policy focused.
Okay. Seconded by Diane. Any other discussion on it? Jennifer?
And then also, before we fill it out, to have clarification of whether you want us to leave it blank if we're not able to, or if you are adding an NA or something like that, just to clarify that before, then we're good.
Yep, Rob?
Yeah, and I'm going to leave it blank. I think that's easiest because then we don't have to go back and change them and take them out. The other thing that does need to be added, though, you'll need to be able to track it to you, because you're going to want to be able to say this is, so we'll have to add a name to it, because those are responsibilities. It's an open public meeting. And so it's one thing I hadn't really addressed when I did that, but we'll put names on it so you could track, oh, these are my comments, or those.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Under policy and procedures, do we have a motion to approve the second reading of the Jamestown Special Education Unit policies? Motion by Brenda, seconded by Bob. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving to number 7, tuition agreements. Is there a motion to approve tuition agreement for a Jamestown 3rd and 6th grade student to attend Kensal Public School for the 2016-17 school year. Motion by Jennifer, seconded by Brenda. Any discussion? Hearing none, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Is there a motion to approve, we'll go B, C, D, E, and F, their tuition agreement for a Jamestown 9th grade student, 3rd and 5th grade student, 1st grade student, another 1st grade student, and a 3rd grade student to attend Montpelier Public Schools for the 2016-17 school year. Motion by Jennifer, seconded by Steve. Any discussion? Hearing none, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Their motion to approve a tuition agreement for Jamestown 10th grade student to attend Barnes County North for this school for the 2016-17 school year. Motion by Brenda, seconded by Jennifer. Any discussion? Hearing none, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving to number 8, deliberation on of candidates. Any discussion? One thing I'd like to say is that, I'd like to thank both of you for standing up and considering running for the school board and to serve. It's a big opportunity, and also it's a challenge too, so. Yep. And they're all, that you guys have made it really tough on the board because you guys are both excellent candidates, so. Any other discussion on them, or? None?
Do you want to talk process?
Yeah, if you want to do that.
Sally, do you want to go through the process that you're going to outline and how, we are going to do paper ballots, but you do need to write your name on them because we do have to attribute a person to a vote. You're in a public meeting. But we do it to ensure complete, that the process is done the right way. Nobody wants to be last in a voice vote. So we want to make sure that, you don't want decisions to be made. You want to do what you think is the right choice to make. So we'll go through that process. Sally, you'll read them all. See, I'm telling you, you should do it, and then I just do it for you. It's typical how I work, how I operate. But Sally will read them all, and then we'll add them up and let you know how it works. Anything to add, Sally? Should I answer that question? Yes. Question 9, I think.
I'll give you some input on, no.
You just fold them, I'll come and collect them and randomize them.
Yeah, go ahead, Bob. Yep.
I'd like to echo what was mentioned earlier about, I've known both candidates for a while, both outstanding people, and one of them is going to walk out of here disappointed. But I'll point out that there are elections in the future. So I hope that this is an encouraging sign that we have two outstanding people running for the board, and I'm very pleased with that. And I hope it continues in the future. So thank you again.
I think you tabulate them, or do you? Yeah.
Okay, now I feel awkward sitting here. We're all watching.
So you have to sit and listen to me talk for an hour about superintendent evaluation, and then the longest part of the meeting is Sally counting votes.
Got a heck of a spreadsheet here, so that's. Yeah, district, yeah.
Don't get flustered. I know I'm
It's close.
It's very close. Okay. I will read out aloud each vote. Greg Allen voted for Melissa Gleason, Heidi Larson for Melissa Gleason, and Jennifer Schmidt for Melissa Gleason. Brenda Remick voted for Cedric. Roger Hout voted for Cedric, Diane Hansen voted for Cedric, and Robert Toso voted for Cedric. So it's a 4-3 for Cedric. You guys made it tough. So
Very close.
Cedric, with a formal motion to the board, will be appointed on October 17th to the school board.
Is there a motion? Motion by Bob, seconded by Brenda. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. So thanks again to both of you, so. Yep. Heidi?
I just want to say, I think the 4-3 vote, it was very reflective of the tough decision that it was.
Most definitely, yes. Items for future agenda. If there is something that comes up, just let myself know or Rob, and we'll get that onto the agenda. Meetings to be scheduled, we have the Health Insurance Committee meeting coming up on Monday, October 10th at 3:30 in the central office conference room. We have the District Improvement meeting on Tuesday, October 11th at 3:30 in the Thompson room here in the middle school. Then we have our next school board meeting on Monday, October 17th at 5:15 here in the Thompson room. And then we also have coming up on October 27th and 28th, the North Dakota School Board Convention on Thursday and Friday in Bismarck. If there's no other business before the board, oh, Heidi?
Yep, and I'd like to add to the future meetings, the Southeast Education Cooperative will be having their next meeting on December 1st at 11:30
Okay, so,
in Castleton at the Governor's Inn.
okay,
Thank
thank you. And just before we adjourn, just remember to right-click on your adjournment to assess the meeting. So, meeting's adjourned.
Soon we'll have the superintendent one and then the adjournment after that.
What's that?
I said soon we'll
Oh, have that.
evaluation and then
I think
then the
that's,
superintendent.
I think that's going to be good.